and ultimately the role of technology in that is as an enabler to this overall goal, which I guess you could say is capturing the process. You need an effective process to capture that data, but then taking that data and taking it right back to the beginning, kind of where we started, about what needs to be done and what's the most effective way to do it. And that comes on to kind of one of the last key points that I really wanted to cover, which was around the role of the MSP or workforce solutions provider within the services procurement market, in relation specifically to visibility and the relationship between that visibility and ROI. And we're kind of touching on it here, but ultimately it's about the value versus cost saving discussion as well. And I'll be interested to get your views on that in terms of how you see that playing out in the market, and also just the recognition of that value rather than just the cost saving element.
Yeah. So I've been in procurement now since early 2000s. And in all of that time, there's been a continuous conversation in procurement about wanting to move away from being measured on cost savings. Cost savings are an easy enough measure to have because they are what they are. You get to the end of the year, have you hit that number or haven't you hit that number? It is kind of easy to measure, but it's not really what matters to the business. Yes, the business might need to manage costs down, but actually what they mean by that is we need to manage value, right? And procurement hasn't traditionally been measured on value; it's been measured on cost. So that narrative in the industry has been going on for a very long time. I think that programs where you are measuring what happened after the contract was executed, where you're putting more effort into finding the right route to market, where you're putting more effort into articulating deliverables and acceptance criteria, they can facilitate that move towards value as opposed to cost. Now, I think that the target state is still a true ROI, a true sort of get to the end of each project and get an ROI number. That's a little way off, but the first steps towards ROI are understanding, what happened. Did the project succeed or fail? I mean, all those 4 points we talked about before are really a proxy for that question. Did it work or didn't it work? Did I channel spend towards a vendor who maximized my chances of that working? And then at the end of the year, how many of these projects that I managed delivered great results? How many didn't? And then the ones that didn't, what did I do to sort of course correct after that and find a way to address that number in future? That allows you to start entering into a value conversation with your business and gathering all this data around what was supposed to happen, how much did it cost, how long did it take, and so on. That allows you to get into a conversation about how procurement facilitated launching a new product, procurement facilitated entering a new market, procurement facilitated building a new system, as opposed to, procurement managed 500 million and we managed to reduce it by 7 million this year. You don't know whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. So getting into value conversations is far more important.
Yeah, the not knowing whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I totally agree with that, because ultimately you might have the typical situation of a CFO saying, we spent 100 million on services last year, we need to cut that to 90 million this year. Well, if it was delivering a really good return for you, then you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. But getting to that point requires not the credibility, but it requires procurement to be being seen as providing strategic input, as you say, rather than just saying control cost. Because and if procurement are armed with this information and they are able to oversee a process without, as I say, not getting in the way of the process operating nice and smoothly, where appropriate, then it just allows something that is going to be ultimately of real value to the business to come to the fore, where procurement can advise the business and they can get to that front end of the process and start looking at who are our most effective suppliers, what other business drivers are there that I need to take into account. Okay, we've got a huge drive on making sure that all of our supply chain have great records when it comes to sustainability, for example. That's an important criteria. We then need to factor that into all this other information that we've got, so that we can add value to the supply chain that we're engaging from the supply chain that we're engaging with.
And until you have those systems and processes in place that allow you that granular level of detail, then the CFO can only come and say, spend 10 million less next year. This is the only option. Once you have tools in place, policies in place, processes in place, teams in place that are able to drill it down to individual actions that happened underneath each and every SOW and quality outcomes and satisfaction ratings and individual clause items within contracts, then there's options for other strategies to happen. But really, any other strategy couldn't be executed unless you have that in place.